It is February 23, 1909. The 287 meters deep Bras d'Or Lake lays beneath a blanket of ice, shrouded in a silence broken only by the whispers of the wind. Hundreds of residents of Quebec, Nova Scotia are skating, eagerly anticipating the spectacle about to happen. Would this silvery balloon cloth-covered wing machine fly? Would the 23 years young pilot and co-designer of this early aircraft, John Alexander Douglas McCurdy, pull off the first controlled powered flight in Canada? Curious onlookers gazed at the strange machine, a contraption of steel, bamboo, wood, and wire held together with some kind of friction tape. The moment of truth had arrived. The Silver Dart, its engine humming steadily, embarked on its fateful journey, defying gravity's pull with each revolution of its meticulously crafted propeller, carved from a single block of wood. A hush fell over the crowd, every eye fixed on the fragile machine as the 50-horsepower V8 engine steadily built momentum. The air crackled with nervous energy. Then, with a graceful lift, the impossible was achieved. The Silver Dart's wheels left the ice, and it ascended into the crisp February sky. Gasps of astonishment turned to cheers of jubilation as it soared 9 meters high, a vision of the future unfolding before their very eyes. For almost a full kilometer, it glided effortlessly, a testament to human ingenuity and daring. Then, with a gentle bump, the Silver Dart touched down on the ice, its 3 brakeless wheels skidding slightly as it came to a stop. A new era of Canadian aviation had begun. The first controlled powered flight in Canada was achieved in the most improbable setting by the Aerial Experiment Association, AEA. This group, formed under the guidance of none other than Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, had been experimenting with flight since 1891 at Quebec, Nova Scotia, and Hammondsport, New York. Bell and the AEA, brimming with the triumph of their achievement, eagerly approached the Canadian government and Army expecting recognition and support. However, their enthusiasm was met with skepticism and indifference. The military brass, entrenched in traditional warfare tactics, dismissed the Silver Dart as a mere novelty. The prevailing belief was that aircraft would never play a significant role in actual combat. The outbreak of the First World War in 1914 shattered those preconceptions. The conflict quickly evolved into a brutal and mechanized struggle where aerial reconnaissance and combat proved to be game changers. The French, quick to recognize the potential of aircrafts, utilized them for reconnaissance missions from the early days of the war. Their aviators soared above the trenches, gathering vital intelligence on enemy troops' movements and fortifications. However, the French weren't alone in harnessing the power of flight. The Central Powers, led by Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, also employed aircraft for reconnaissance and even began experimenting with aerial bombardment. As the war raged on, both sides invested heavily in developing faster, more maneuverable fighter planes and larger, more destructive bombers. The skies above the battlefields became a theater of fierce aerial duels and devastating bombing raids. During this tumultuous period, Canadian pilots flocked to join the British Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service. These brave aviators, eager to serve their country and the Allied cause, distinguished themselves with their skill and courage. They gained invaluable experience in the crucible of war. As the First World War drew to a close, Canada emerged with a newfound appreciation of the importance of air power. The conflict had demonstrated that mastery of the skies was crucial for modern warfare. This realization, coupled with the sacrifices and achievements of Canadian pilots, fueled the drive to establish a national air service. A century ago, Canada took its first steps towards building an independent air force, a testament to the vision and determination of those who dared to dream of flight. April 1st, 1924 marks the birth of Canada's independent air force. This is the story of the Royal Canadian Air Force. Canada, a land where dreams took flight, ideas blossomed, destinies were forged, and a rich tapestry of peoples, stories, events, and places shaped its identity. Behind every defining moment, there are faces, voices, and ideas that have shaped the nation. In 49 Degrees North, we take you to the heart of Canada's turning points. We explore how passionate individuals and the events they shaped have created the country we know today. For making this podcast possible, 49 Degrees North gratefully acknowledges the funding provided by the Government of Canada's Canadian Heritage Commemorate Canada program. Share with your friends and family and join us to continue exploring the captivating stories that have shaped this remarkable country. The Silver Dart's moment of glory was tragically short-lived. On a fateful day, August 2nd, 1909, during its final scheduled flight at the Petawawa, Ontario Militia Summer Camp, the aircraft met an untimely demise, damaged beyond repair. Randall Wakelam, co-author of On the Wings of War and Peace, capturing the history of the Royal Canadian Air Force during the first decades of the Cold War, and bringing new perspective to the RCAF's role in shaping the modern Canadian nation.
So let's actually start a little bit before 1914. We'll go back to 1909, and that's when Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, and a number of other inventors collaborated to produce the first powered aircraft to fly in the British Empire, now the Commonwealth. And they did this at a place called Baddeck in Nova Scotia, and you can go there today, and there's a museum that celebrates this. They thought they had something interesting and significant, and they took it to the Canadian government, specifically the Army, because there was no Air Force, and said, hey, would you like to buy one of these, or maybe 2 or 3? And the answer was, thank you, no, we don't see any future in this technology, which was a bit perplexing, I'm sure, because at the same time, in Europe, there was a huge push towards military aviation. This kind of introduces a bit of a geopolitical theme, I guess, for Canada, where politicians generally have not seen any threat to the country, and therefore they don't, as is the case today, don't spend as much on defense as maybe they would otherwise if they did see enemies just on the other side of the border. In any case, so there was no interest in military aviation until 1914 when the war started, and then the Minister of Defense, or of Militia as it was called then, a fellow by the name of Sam Hughes, said, we need an aviation corps. And he sent some folks to the United States to buy 1 aircraft. He found a pilot and 2 mechanics, and they sent this Canadian Aviation Corps by ship to Britain. By the time the aircraft, which was parked on the deck, got to Britain, it was pretty well kaput. It had been ravaged by storms and high seas, and so that was the end of the Canadian Aviation Corps. But many young Canadians were saying, hey, this looks like something I'd like to do rather than fight in the trenches or perhaps, go to sea. And so over time, Canadians, particularly Canadians in the Army serving in Europe, asked for transfers to what was called the Royal Flying Corps. So it was a British Army organization. And so people like Billy Bishop and William Barker, both of whom won Victoria Crosses, and thousands of others joined the Royal Flying Corps.
The spark of aviation's potential had been lit. The world was on the cusp of a revolution, and the First World War would soon prove the devastating impact aircraft could have on the battlefield. The Canadian Aviation Corps, CAC, represented Canada's first foray into military aviation. The ill-fated Burgess Dunn floatplane, the first ever aircraft purchased for the Canadian military, was tragically left to rot on Salisbury Plain in southern England. These plains are famous for its rich archaeology, including Stonehenge, one of the world's best-known landmarks. World War I marked a turning point. For the first time, Canada sent its own aviators into the skies of battle, fighting not under their own flag, but as part of the British military. These brave pilots and airmen, within their short-lived squadrons, proved that Canada could contribute directly to the war effort, soaring on the wings of their own ambition and skill. Across the Atlantic, the British Royal Flying Corps was busy establishing a network of training fields, including 6 in southern Ontario. There, amidst the vast Canadian landscapes, thousands of young Canadians eagerly answered the call to become pilots and crew members. They dreamed of taking to the skies, fueled by a sense of duty and the allure of adventure. By the war's end, a staggering 25% of UK's Royal Air Force officers were Canadians, a testament to their dedication and talent. The war's conclusion left the world scarred, but also enlightened. The importance of air power in modern warfare was undeniable. Canada, recognizing this new reality, set its sights on establishing its own independent air force. The seeds of the Royal Canadian Air Force had been sown, ready to blossom in the years to come. To understand the RCAF's creation in 1924, we must unravel the tapestry woven from three distinct threads: the Canadian Air Force, the Royal Canadian Naval Air Service, and the Canadian Air Board. The Canadian Air Force, a small but proud contingent of 2 squadrons, 1 fighter, 1 bomber. Though operating under British command, it marked the first time Canada sent an air force into battle, a testament to the growing recognition of air power's importance. The fighter squadron, equipped with a mix of reconnaissance and combat aircraft, took to the skies over the Western Front, their missions providing vital intelligence. The bomber squadron delivered payloads, striking the enemy war machine. But as the guns fell silent and the armistice was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, these squadrons, like many others, were disbanded. The world yearned for peace, and the need for vast air fleets seemed to have vanished. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the Royal Canadian Naval Air Service had been established in 1918, a response to the looming threat of German U-boats. Its mission was clear: protect Canadian shipping and bolster maritime defenses. Yet, with the war's end, its role diminished, and it too was disbanded after a mere 3 months of existence. The Canadian Air Board took flight in 1919. This pioneering organization was tasked with overseeing all aspects of aviation within Canada, from military defense to civilian regulations. Canada became a trailblazer, as it was the first nation to enact laws governing the entire realm of aviation. This agency was entrusted with a sweeping mandate, overseeing everything from the regulation of civilian flights to the fostering of cutting-edge aeronautical research. It was a time of great promise and rapid growth, with the Air Board playing a pivotal role in shaping Canada's aviation landscape. However, by 1923, a restructuring of aviation administration led to the dissolution of the Air Board, its responsibilities scattered among other government departments. In 1920, after the war's end, the fledgling Canadian Air Force took its first tentative steps as a separate branch of the Army, still small and constrained by limited resources. It was a vision of peacetime preparedness, tasked with the daunting challenge of defending Canada's vast airspace and bolstering national defense. Though modest in its beginnings, the Canadian Air Force laid the very foundation upon which, 100 years later, this force still rises in our skies. On April 1st, 1924, the Royal Canadian Air Force soared into existence. Randall Wakelam.
Back in 1924, the Air Force got the Royal designation following the British Royal Air Force in 1918 and the Australian Royal Air Force created in 1921. So in 1924, we get the Royal title as well. And that's why we're celebrating 100 years of our history, even though you could go back a little further than that in terms of events focusing on Canadians who are flying in uniform.
While the RCAF operated under the authority of the head of the Canadian Militia, the Army's name at the time, it wasn't simply a subordinate unit. The RCAF functioned as a full-time organization with its own distinct orders and responsibilities. 59 years old, King George V, a military man himself, personally bestowed the prestigious royal designation upon the newly formed force. This honor recognized the valor and sacrifice of Canadian aviators in the Great War. The Royal Canadian Air Force was more than just a new name. It embodied a unified and potent air service, poised to defend Canada's skies and, in the century to follow, fulfill a broader mandate on the world stage. World War I not only forged a generation of Canadian aviators, it also laid the groundwork for a burgeoning aircraft manufacturing industry. The interwar years were not entirely peaceful, however. Border skirmishes and the looming threat of future conflicts ensured a steady, albeit reduced, demand for military aircraft. The newly formed Royal Canadian Air Force, eager to modernize its fleet, spurred innovation in aircraft design and technology. With the war's end, these manufacturers faced a stark reality. Military contracts had dried up, leaving them scrambling to survive. The answer lay in diversification. They turned their attention to civilian aircraft, designing planes for passenger transport, mail delivery, and even crop dusting. The Canadian government actively supported the aviation industry through subsidies, contracts, and the establishment of research facilities like the National Research Council's Aeronautics Laboratory. Companies like de Havilland Canada, Canadian Vickers, and Canadian Aeroplanes Limited sprang up, initially driven by the demand for military aircraft. Founded in 1928, de Havilland Canada would go on to design and produce iconic bush planes like the Beaver and the Otter, vital to Canada's remote communities and resource industries. On its part, Canadian Vickers, established in 1911, initially focused on shipbuilding but expanded into aircraft-building flying boats. Randall Wakelam.
In 1918 and 1919, is there a need for an Air Force in Canada? We go back 10 years to 1909. Well, is there any threat? Not really. So what might we do? A number of senior civil servants who are associated with the Army and the Navy say, if we want to have an Air Force, and there seems to be a good reason to think about having an Air Force, it has to be of value to the country. And certainly if there are no military threats, then maybe the value comes in other ways. And so they set out to establish a civilian air board, which will have a component of it that's called the Canadian Air Force. Very small. It will use surplus aircraft and facilities, so a lot of the training aircraft from the Royal Flying Corps training schools can be used to do basic aviation tasks. And what sorts of things are those? They get into forest fire patrols. They get into anti-drug smuggling patrols. They do airmail. They develop a capability to do medical evacuations. They do some aerial photography. So all of those things that we still value today in Canada are introduced a century ago. And so in some cases, the flying is done by the civilians with the Air Board, and in other cases, it's done with the Canadian Air Force. Military pilots trained during the war, technicians trained during the war, aircraft that were suitable for training are still suitable to fly for a while. A lot of that work, however, as the 20s go on, it's recognized that, there aren't always airfields where we have to go to do a medical evacuation to check for forest fires. But there are lots of lakes and broad rivers, so let's land on those. And so a British company called Vickers, that's located in Montreal, develops a seaplane division. It's a flying boat, and they put a couple of wings and a motor on the back. It's more complicated than that, obviously. And so they start producing a series of aircraft from a single-engine aircraft with two seats called a vedette to larger aircraft that can actually transport a fair bit of cargo. And so these aircraft operate all through the 20s and into the 30s.
This period also witnessed a consolidation of the industry, with larger companies swallowing up smaller ones in a bid for dominance. The government, recognizing the strategic importance of aviation, played a crucial role in supporting this growth, fostering an environment where Canadian aviation could thrive. These interwar years were a time of adaptation and transformation. The aviation industry, born from the fires of war, was finding its footing in a new era. It was a time of innovation, resilience, and quiet preparation for the storms that lay ahead. In December 1939, just 3 months after the outbreak of World War II, the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan was officially launched. This colossal program spanned the globe, uniting the air forces of Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other Commonwealth nations in a shared purpose. Randall Wakelam. co-author of On the Wings of War and Peace.
The First World War and even the interwar period, there were some realpolitik concerns that had to be addressed before any military activity could take place, and it was different in the sort of 2 to 3 years leading up to the war. The Prime Minister, William Lyon Mackenzie King,
Britain has been an example to the world,
who was well known for his attempts to avoid conscription, is attempting to avoid conscription as early as 1936, 1937. And his thinking is this: we had conscription in the Great War. Why? Because tens of thousands of Canadians were dying in the trenches and we had to replace them. And there weren't enough volunteers. But on the other hand, in the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service, the losses were relatively small. So were we to promote Canada's contribution through an Air Force facet, if, by the way, we were to focus principally on training in Canada to support Britain's Air Force, why, this is a win-win situation. Let's do that, he says. And I'm being a little bit sarcastic here, but not really, because almost immediately that Canada declares war, King wants to pull together people from Britain, Australia, and New Zealand and talk about something that becomes known as the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. So this is going to make that Royal Flying Corps operation in 1917 and 18 look very, very small by comparison. But King figures that if he can offer Canada as a training institution and employ a lot of Canadians in that, not even going to Britain to fight, that this will save Canada from conscription. It's a little bit of a political, how should I say, stratagem. I can't blame him for trying. Ultimately, it doesn't work because in 1944, the Canadian Army is short on soldiers and needs conscription again. But let's stay with the Air Force. This sounds like a grand plan. King offers to set up what ultimately becomes about 100 flying training schools of various types all across the country. And these are built very, very quickly by Canadians, and they're staffed by Canadians, both civilian, who can do the immediate flying training to take someone who doesn't fly and get them to the point where they can get into an airplane and take off and land safely. So there's about 7,000 civilians involved. There's about 35,000 RCAF people in uniform, flying instructors, mechanics, cooks, etc., and they're spread, as I say, all across the country. This huge operation trains ultimately, by the time it shuts down in 1944, it trains 132,000 flying personnel, pilots, navigators, wireless operators, bombardiers, gunners, all the people who are needed to fly either a small fighter aircraft, an anti-submarine warfare aircraft, or a heavy bomber.
The BCATP was the largest aircrew training program in history, producing nearly half of all Allied aircrew during World War II. It was a massive logistical feat, involving the construction of hundreds of airfields and training facilities across Canada. Canada, with its vast open spaces and favorable flying conditions, became the heart of this operation. From coast to coast, training facilities sprang up, transforming quiet prairies and sleepy towns into bustling hubs of aerial activity. Flight schools, air observer schools, bombing and gunnery ranges, and even specialized wireless schools hummed with the energy of thousands of eager trainees. The wireless schools were essential in preparing aircrew for the critical role of communication and navigation in the increasingly complex aerial battles of World War II. They taught Morse code, radio operation, and troubleshooting, ensuring crews could stay connected and informed in the heat of combat. By the war's end, the BCATP had trained a staggering number of aircrew, all poised to take their place in the fight. It was a testament to Canada's commitment to the Allied cause and its growing prowess in the field of aviation. The Royal Canadian Air Force itself expanded rapidly, with 250,000 Canadians serving, including over 17,000 women in the Women's Division. These brave women and men played a vital role in the war. Canadian pilots, known for their skill and tenacity, became legends in the Battle of Britain that lasted 3 months and 3 weeks from the summer of 1940. They flew iconic aircraft like the Spitfire and the Hurricane, engaging in fierce dogfights against the German Air Force and helping to defend Britain from invasion. Their courage in the face of overwhelming odds helped to turn the tide of the war. August 26, 1940. A date etched in the RCAF's history. Number 1 Squadron faced the Luftwaffe in their first combat sortie, claiming 3 kills and 4 damaged. But the battle took its toll. Flying Officer R.L. Edwards became the first Canadian pilot to fall in the Battle of Britain, a stark reminder of the high cost of freedom. Canadian squadrons accounted for nearly 10% of the total fighter force during the Battle of Britain. Among those, a unique Canadian squadron emerged, the 425 Squadron, formed in England in June 1942. This was the first French-Canadian squadron, proudly composed of French-Canadian air and ground crew. This bomber unit focused on strategic and tactical bombing operations. From June to October 1943, they flew Vickers Wellington aircraft, supporting the Allied invasions of Sicily and Italy. The squadron had a distinctive nickname, the Alouettes, the French word for larks. This reflected their cultural identity and was further emphasized by their motto, Je te plumerai, meaning, I'll pluck you. This playful phrase, taken from a popular French-Canadian folk song also titled Alouette, captured the spirit and camaraderie of this unique squadron. But the RCAF's impact extended far beyond the skies over Britain. They participated in bombing raids deep into enemy territory, conducted daring reconnaissance missions, and provided crucial air support to ground troops. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, Canadian pilots played a key role in the largest seaborne invasion in history, helping to liberate Europe from Nazi tyranny. RCAF pilots flew a variety of aircraft on D-Day, including Spitfires, the only British fighter produced continuously throughout the war, Typhoons, a medium-high altitude interceptor, and Lancaster bombers with their long, unobstructed bomb bay that could take the largest bombs used by the British Royal Air Force. They conducted bombing missions, provided fighter cover, and even towed gliders full of troops to their landing zones behind enemy lines. The Second World War tested the RCAF like never before. They emerged victorious, their legacy cemented in the annals of military history. But the world was changing rapidly, and new challenges loomed on the horizon. The Cold War was dawning, and the RCAF would soon find itself adapting to an entirely new geopolitical landscape. Peace was achieved, but the Second World War's end also brought a tense standoff with the Soviet Union. The Iron Curtain descended, with its specter of nuclear war. The Cold War was upon us. The Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb in 1949, highlighting the vulnerability of North America to long-range bomber attacks. The Soviet Union's ability to strike across the Arctic Circle, coupled with its nascent nuclear arsenal, made the defense of Canada's vast northern expanse a paramount concern. The challenge was immense. From the frozen wilderness of the Arctic to the bustling cities of the South, every inch of Canada's vast territory demanded vigilance and protection. In a bold display of aviation prowess, Canada also orchestrated a historic feat in early 1949. A Canadian-built Canadair North Star, a sleek 4-engine airliner, embarked on the first-ever non-stop Trans-Canada flight. It roared into the sky between Halifax and Vancouver, its powerful engines propelling it eastward across the continent. The Canadair North Star, a modified version of the Douglas DC-4, was indeed renowned for its reliability and long-range capabilities, though its unpressurized cabin was notoriously noisy due to the powerful Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. The flight took 8 hours and 32 minutes to traverse 3,839 kilometers of Canadian soil without a single stop. The 14-man crew, led by Flying Officer J.A. Jolicoeur, had not only completed a remarkable journey, but also conducted a crucial fuel consumption test, vital for future long-range operations. This historic flight was more than just a technological achievement. It was a symbol of Canada's determination in the face of a new global reality. For the Royal Canadian Air Force, it marked the dawn of a golden era, a time of rapid expansion and modernization as it prepared to meet the many challenges of the enduring Cold War. Even as the Cold War cast its shadow, the RCAF was making strides in another arena, breaking barriers and expanding opportunities for women. On October 25, 1951, history was made when the first group of 4 nursing sisters graduated as fully qualified pararescue specialists, the Parabelles. A second group of 3 followed in their footsteps the next year. These remarkable women, though restricted by the conventions of their time, stepped up when called upon, parachuting into remote and treacherous terrain to provide life-saving medical care. Their courage and skill in the face of danger proved that gender was no barrier to excellence in this demanding field. Amongst them, Flying Officer Marion Nellie, the first Canadian woman to make a parachute jump on an organized pararescue course. She left the service as a nursing sister in 1957 with 26 parajumps to her record. The Parabelles were pioneers in the field of search and rescue, paving the way for women like Tammy Negraff, who in 1998 became the first female search and rescue technician in the Canadian Armed Forces. Sadly, societal norms dictated that their service ended upon marriage, and the last Parabelle retired from rescue duties in 1956. Yet their legacy lived on, inspiring generations of women to pursue careers in aviation and emergency response. The Parabelles were trailblazers, excelling in high-pressure, life-and-death situations that require exceptional physical fitness, advanced medical knowledge, and the mental fortitude to handle emergencies. Though it would take several decades for the field to fully open to women, the Parabelles' contribution were a testament to the determination of those who dared to serve, a powerful reminder of the importance of inclusivity in all aspects of the RCAF, including the critical search and rescue roles they pioneered. As the Cold War escalated, the threat of a Soviet nuclear attack loomed large. Canada felt the need to respond to possible Russian aircraft delivering their payloads in the north. Randall Wakelam again.
I'll just talk a little bit about this mythological being, creature, thing, the Avro Arrow, for a few minutes. So by 1954, the Air Force has been able to put the CF-100 into service. But already the technologies in that aircraft are dated, and they've been thinking about something bigger and better, not just to be bigger and better, but actually to be able to go further north faster and engage Russian bombers before they can become any real threat to industry or populations. And so that new concept takes form in the Avro Arrow, which is this aircraft that many people write about, many people argue should have been built, but never was. About 6 or 7 prototypes were built and were flown, and the aircraft, as an aircraft, was very, very capable. But the onboard radar system to be able to detect and shoot down Russian bombers still needed to be developed. The air-to-air missiles that were needed, originally they were going to be Canadian, then they weren't. What were they going to be? Where were they going to come from? All of this was adding to the time it required to build the aircraft and get it into service, but more importantly to the cost. And all of this was at a time after 1954 when the Russians had not attacked and didn't seem likely to attack. And so the government and Air Force leaders said, maybe we don't actually need to build the Avro Arrow because it's going to cost huge amounts of money for no absolute need. Maybe there are other ways we can do things. So the project is canceled, and it causes a great political turmoil in the 1957-58 timeframe. The Liberal government of Louis Saint-Laurent should have probably canceled it because they knew of the problems. They left it to the Conservative government of John Diefenbaker, and it did not go well for Diefenbaker, unfortunately. He made the right decision, but he did not get credit for making the right decision, I don't think.
Canada and the United States viewed Soviet aircraft traveling over the Arctic as a threat, and also recognized the need for a unified defense strategy, one that would leverage their combined strengths to protect the North American continent. This realization led to the creation of a groundbreaking partnership. In the face of escalating Cold War tensions and the looming threat of a Soviet nuclear attack from their long-range bombers, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, was born on May 12, 1958. Its name, at the time, was North American Air Defense Command. Born from a recommendation by the Joint Canadian-U.S. Military Group in late 1956, NORAD emerged in 1958 as a testament to binational cooperation. This organization united the military strength of Canada and the United States, creating a formidable force dedicated to the monumental task of providing aerospace warning, maintaining air sovereignty, and protecting both Canada and the continental United States from any air and sea threats. The then financial investment in NORAD was substantial, with annual expenditures reaching well over $5 billion today's dollars. This commitment underscored the gravity of the Cold War threat and the determination of both nations to deter aggression. Within this powerful alliance, the Royal Canadian Air Force played a pivotal role. It assumed responsibility for the Canadian NORAD region, CANR, headquartered at CFB Winnipeg. From this strategic location, the RCAF monitored Canadian airspace, identified potential threats, and stood ready to respond with its fleet of CF-18 Hornet fighter jets, the famed twin-engine multi-role fighter aircraft, the backbone of the RCAF's fighter fleet since the 1980s. The Hornet is renowned for its versatility, capable of air-to-air combat, air-to-ground strikes, and reconnaissance missions. The RCAF also contributed to NORAD's vast network of radar stations and other sensors, including the crucial North Warning System, a chain of radar installations stretching across the unforgiving Arctic landscape. This network provides early warning of any potential incursions into North American airspace, allowing for swift and decisive action. Even as the Cold War thawed, the RCAF's role within NORAD remained vital. The command's mission evolved to encompass new threats, including terrorism and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. On February 1, 1968, the Canadian Forces Reorganization Act came into effect, amalgamating the RCAF, the Royal Canadian Navy, and Canadian Army. The RCAF became part of air defense, air transport, material, training, maritime, and mobile commands. On September 2, 1975, Air Command began bringing air units under its command and administrative control. It also began to develop air-related policies for all air units and personnel. This was the start of one unified Air Force again. The RCAF continued to evolve, contributing to international operations, peacekeeping missions, national defense, and search and rescue operations. One of the most remarkable search and rescue operations in RCAF history took place on October 4, 1980. A fire broke out in the engine room of the cruise ship NV Princendom while sailing in the Gulf of Alaska. With the fire raging out of control, a massive rescue effort was launched. Search and rescue aircraft from Canada and the United States Navy and Coast Guard sprang into action. Among them were the RCAF's CH-113 Labrador helicopters. These rugged machines, known for their long-range capabilities, braved treacherous conditions to reach the stricken vessel. The CH-113s, operating at the very limits of their range, played a crucial role in evacuating the 520 passengers and crew from the Princendam. This daring operation showcased the RCAF's unwavering commitment to saving lives, a commitment embodied in the motto long embraced by the SAR techs, that others may live. Following the September 11, 2001 attacks, NORAD launched Operation Noble Eagle, an ongoing mission to protect North American airspace from internal threats. The RCAF actively participates in this operation, conducting air patrols, responding to potential hijackings, and supporting other security measures. Throughout its history, the RCAF has demonstrated its adaptability and commitment to safeguarding Canada and North America. From daring search and rescue missions in the remote wilderness to combat operations in the Gulf War, the RCAF has consistently risen to the challenge. On April 26, 2011, amidst the turmoil of the Libyan conflict, the Halifax-class HMCS Charlottetown witnessed pro-government forces shelling civilians 187 kilometers to the east of Tripoli on the Mediterranean coast near Cape Misrata. This violation of international law was promptly relayed to an airborne warning and control system aircraft patrolling the skies. Swiftly, the AWACS directed a coalition air response, including 2 Canadian CF-188 Hornets, to investigate the situation. Upon confirming the source of the attack, and with the authorization granted, the coalition aircraft unleashed their firepower, neutralizing several dozen assault vehicles. This pivotal moment marked a first for the Canadian military, a seamless chain of communication and coordination from a Canadian warship on the sea to a Canadian AWACS in the air, culminated in decisive action by Canadian fighter jets. It was a powerful demonstration of the RCAF's capabilities and commitment. The Royal Canadian Air Force, forged in the crucible of conflict and tempered by the demands of the Cold War, remains a vital component of Canada's defense strategy. Today, the Royal Canadian Air Force stands as a testament to its storied past, yet remains firmly focused on the future. Equipped with cutting-edge technology and staffed with highly trained personnel, it is a dynamic and agile force, ready to tackle the complex challenges of the 21st century. The RCAF currently operates a diverse fleet of aircraft, including the modernized CF-18 Hornet fighter jets, the versatile CC-130J Hercules transport aircraft, and the state-of-the-art CH-148 Cyclone maritime helicopters. From defending Canadian sovereignty and patrolling North American skies alongside its NORAD partners, to participating in international peacekeeping missions and humanitarian operations, the RCAF continues to embody the spirit of service and excellence that has defined it for over a century. The RCAF's missions extends beyond traditional military operations. It also plays a vital role in supporting ground security operations within Canada, providing critical airlift capabilities, surveillance, and other essential services. In November 2021, when an atmospheric river unleashed devastating floods and landslides in British Columbia, the RCAF once again demonstrated its unwavering commitment to Canadians. Even before the official call for assistance came, CH-149 Commemorate helicopters from 442 Squadron were already in the air, plucking stranded individuals from isolated stretches of highway. The CH-149 Cormorant, a long-range helicopter primarily used for search and rescue, proved its versatility during these trying times in BC by evacuating over 300 people from flood-ravaged areas. CH-146 Griffin helicopters, along with the CH-148 Cyclone, joined the relief effort, while a massive CC-177 Globemaster transport aircraft ferried additional Griffins and the iconic CH-147 Chinook helicopters to the scene. Operation Lentus 2106 was one of the largest domestic deployments in recent RCAF history, involving 12 aircraft and hundreds of personnel. They conducted a wide range of missions, from evacuations and supply drops to medical flights and aerial surveys. The RCAF response was swift and comprehensive, with its aircrafts rescuing stranded individuals, delivering vital supplies to isolated communities, conducting medical evacuations, and providing crucial aerial assessments of the damage. Operation Lentus 2106, a testament to the RCAF's dedication and professionalism, concluded on December 17, 2021, leaving behind a grateful province and a proud nation. While the image of sleek fighter jets soaring through the clouds is often synonymous with air power, arguably the unsung heroes of the Royal Canadian Air Force are its versatile and hard-working helicopters. From humble beginnings in the late 1940s, the RCAF's rotary wing fleet has evolved to play a crucial role in a vast array of operations. The RCAF recognized the unique capabilities of helicopters early on, initially deploying them for search and rescue missions and utility transport. The Sikorsky H-04S, later redesignated the H-5, also known as the Horse, was the RCAF's first helicopter entering service in 1947. It proved its worth in a variety of roles, including search and rescue, medical evacuation, and probably even transporting Vincent Macy, the first Canadian-born Governor-General known for embracing advancements in aviation. Further introduced in the early 1950s, the H-5 literally became a workhorse for these tasks, plucking stranded individuals from danger and ferrying personnel and supplies across vast distances. Wakelam.
The first helicopters were bought by the Canadian Army back in the very early 1950s. And the Army sent officers to fly with the British, and they sent officers to fly with the Americans. And by the mid-1960s, a big study was done to validate the requirement for helicopters, largely for the Army. The Navy had already been flying helicopters. They had designed their ships, actually, to allow helicopters to land on the back of their destroyers. This was very much in keeping with the most advanced concept of other larger navies. But for the Army, by the mid-1960s, they had decided that they did, in fact, need large numbers of helicopters. And in the very early 1970s, Canada had probably about 130 helicopters of various types.
As helicopter technology advanced, so too did their applications within the RCAF. In the 1970s, the Bell CH-135 Twin Huey arrived on the scene. Renowned for its reliability and versatility, it saw extensive service with the RCAF in various roles, including support for peacekeeping missions and disaster relief operations. The CH-135s added tactical transport and reconnaissance capabilities to the fleet. These nimble helicopters proved invaluable for troop movements, aerial surveillance, and light cargo transport. Perhaps the most iconic helicopter in RCF history is the Sikorsky CH-124 Sea King. Introduced in the early 1960s and lovingly nicknamed the Labrador, it was a mainstay of the RCAF's maritime operations for over 5 decades, patrolling Canada's vast coastlines and playing a crucial role in its anti-submarine warfare. It participated in countless search and rescue missions, fishery patrols, and anti-submarine operations, earning a reputation for its reliability and longevity. As the Sea Kings aged, the RCAF embarked on a modernization program, culminating in the introduction of the Sikorsky CH-148 Cyclone. With its state-of-the-art sensors and capabilities, it represents the future of naval aviation in Canada. The Cyclone is highly sophisticated, designed for anti-submarine warfare, anti-surface warfare, and search and rescue missions. It features advanced radar, sonar, warfare systems, making it a potent asset for the RCAF. The RCAF's helicopters have not only proven invaluable in domestic emergencies, but have also played a crucial role in conflicts and humanitarian crises around the globe. A prime example is their contribution to the Canadian mission in Afghanistan. On December 30th, 2008, 6 powerful CH-147F Chinook helicopters, already proudly bearing Canadian colors, were transferred from the U.S. Army to the Canadian Forces. These heavy-lift choppers were quickly integrated into the Joint Task Force Afghanistan Air Wing, where they became a lifeline for Canadian troops in the challenging Afghan terrain. The Chinook's ability to transport troops, equipment, and supplies over long distances and rugged terrain significantly reduced the reliance on vulnerable ground convoys, which were often targeted by Taliban insurgents. This, in turn, helped to minimize casualties among Canadian forces. These Chinooks, with their distinctive twin rotors and immense lifting capacity, became a symbol of support for Canadian soldiers on the front lines. They enabled the swift deployment of troops, the evacuation of the wounded, and the delivery of essential supplies even to the most remote and inaccessible outposts. The Chinook's contribution to the mission in Afghanistan underscored the vital role of helicopters in modern warfare, proving their worth in the most demanding of environments. Closer to home, the RCAF helicopters had proven to be indispensable in responding to natural disasters and emergencies. As environmental challenges escalate, these lifelines in the sky will become even more crucial in safeguarding Canadians and their communities. The RCAF's helicopter fleet remains a vital and versatile asset, ready to respond to a wide range of challenges both at home and abroad. These remarkable machines and the skilled crews who fly them continue to embody the RCAF's unwavering commitment to service and excellence. From the daring rescues to the critical support provided in times of conflict and crisis, these remarkable machines and the dedicated crews who fly them have written their own chapter of Canadian aviation.
The Air Force probably is busier since the end of the Cold War than it was during the Cold War. Lots of peace support operations, lots of peacemaking operations. The Air Force has been involved in a wide range of not just search and rescue operations, but humanitarian assistance operations here in Canada. Forest fires, floods, all require a significant insertion of air assets. Oftentimes, a Hercules will appear in a northern village that's cut off from land routes and has to be evacuated because of forest fires. That's the history of the RCAF. If you want to go back to the original air-mindedness and utility to Canadians, we continue to do that, not just domestically, but I think internationally as well, in maintaining stability as best we can, as best the world can in various places that require assistance.
The Royal Canadian Air Force's journey has been one of remarkable transformation and dedication. From its humble beginnings with the Silver Dart to its modern fleet of cutting-edge aircraft, the RCAF has consistently pushed the boundaries of aviation, serving Canada with distinction in times of war and peace. The stories of its brave pilots, dedicated crews, and pioneering women like the Parabelles reminds us of the sacrifices made and the challenges overcome in the pursuit of excellence. The RCAF's commitment to innovation, adaptability, and inclusivity has ensured its relevance and effectiveness in an ever-changing world. As we look to the future, the RCAF's role remains as vital as ever. From defending Canadian sovereignty to contributing to global peace and security, the men and women of the RCAF continue to embody the spirit of service that has defined this remarkable institution for a century. The RCAF's legacy is not just one of machines and missions. It's a legacy of courage, dedication, and the pursuit of a brighter future for Canada and the world. As the RCAF continues to soar to new heights, we can rest assured that our skies are protected, our values upheld, and our dreams of a safer, more peaceful world kept alive. In tribute to sacrifices made by RCAF SAR techs, Sergeant Mike Hall of the RCAF band composed and recorded the song titled That Others May Live.
Some will give that others may live. Some give all, they answer the call. And some they say, just live for the day they can lend a hand to their brothers who fall.
As we commemorate the Royal Canadian Air Force's centennial, we honor the countless individuals whose courage and dedication have shaped Canada into the nation it is today. Their stories, woven into the very fabric of our history, echo not just in the pages of textbooks, but in the streets we walk and the landmarks that grace our skylines. Next time you stroll through your city or town, take a moment to pause and reflect. Every street name, every building whispers tales of our past. There are living monuments to the explorers, pioneers, and visionaries who built this country, brick by brick, dream by dream. This journey through Canada's rich tapestry of events, people, and places is made possible by the generous support of the Government of Canada's Canadian Heritage Commemorate Canada program. Share this podcast with your family and friends, and together let's uncover the hidden treasures of our shared heritage. Don't forget to explore the other captivating episodes of 49 Degrees North, where we delve deeper into the fascinating stories that have shaped Canada into a remarkable country.